Yep.
All right. Today, Stacy, do you mind making the motions? And Jesse, can you make the seconds?
Sure.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order at 9:30 a.m. per Public Act 101-0640. This meeting is being held by remote attendance. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Excuse me. Blazek.
Here.
Bo Davis.
Here.
Bussey.
Here.
All right, I'm going to try this the right way, Jennifer. Cottrell.
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 Here.
Jenkins. Okay, Milivek, is that the?
Here.
Okay, Whitman.
Here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say mute, Julie, because that sound is you. All right, great. It does not appear that we have any visitors. Does anyone have any public comment? Okay, can we have a motion to accept the October 16th SWAN board meeting agenda?
I move.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. We need a roll call.
Okay, Blazek,
Yes.
Bo Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrell,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Milivek,
Yes.
Whitman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then we need a motion to, I'm sorry, I lost my place. We need a motion to approve the SWAN financials for September.
I move.
In a second.
Second.
Discussion?
I just thought that in case anyone was wondering, there's 4 months of curbside communicator bills there. And I did talk to Aaron and Ginny, and there was a billing issue. And so Aaron had held those back and so that he could get it worked out. And that's why we're seeing 4 months at one time. The other thing you might notice is that Kleinthorpe and Jenkins was bill for them was charged to accounting instead of legal.
Mhm.
That's an issue with Lauterbach, and so that'll be corrected as well.
That's my mistake. Okay.
I really like the summary page, Aaron. That's new, right?
Yeah, we added that this month. That was something that we had designed that we could roll up a lot of detail into a like kind of a budget at a glance. I was really happy with the way it looked because I was talking with someone, they were bragging about their library director that was able to get their budget down to like 1 page. I was like, I got it even better. I got it down to half a page. That said, I did in my report note that just to clarify with Lauterbach that they've been presenting these numbers on a cash basis, which is different from what Rails Finance had done, which was an accrual basis. So that means, for example, when we made our big insurance payments, those lines now show that they are, 100%, paid for. Where if you were to look at, reports from the year prior, those would be, basically prorated and expensed each month. So I don't know what your preference is. I asked our accountant to check with our Wes Levy, who's at Lauterbach, and their recommendation was just to keep going this way. It is somewhat simpler to just think of it as a cash, but you are just always going to see some lines that are 100% consumed, and just understand that we've paid everything for that year in that line. I don't know how you all are presenting to your board.
That's the way we do it too. I don't know about the rest of you.
We do it the same way, so this makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
Right.
Us also, we do it this way.
And I did include in my report a few of the other lines that we were, looking at as far as this month. But like the curbside communicator was something that, and because we had rolled that out pretty quickly, and also Unique had rolled that out fairly quickly to their customers as an option, I want to say the billing got a kind of a rough start. So that was why I said there's some things here that they need to correct. And then it took a while for their accounting department to get that straight. But I think we're all straight now. Everything, we weren't overcharged for anything within Communicator. We reconciled it against what we had as far as what libraries were using it and what libraries dropped it, because that would happen throughout the last 6 months. And let's see, a few other things. I noted the insurance. I've noted that the information services subscription budget that was last month that we had the EBSCO subscription on Novelist. I don't think there's anything else worth pointing out, but I'm happy to answer any questions or at least make notes if you want me to look into that. But Dawn, thank you for emailing me, so I had time to look at a few things.
Not a problem.
Okay, anything else on that? Jenny, can we
One
roll
note.
call?
Yeah,
go ahead.
just one note. We will be getting the audit presented next month. So this balance sheet is probably going to likely be updated and changed once we have that, because with the accounting transition FY20 audit, I've had questions to our accountant about the balance sheet, so we should start to see those get resolved, and I'll address next month what those balance sheet changes are once they happen.
Great, thank you. Jenny, can we have a roll call?
Okay. Blazek,
Yes.
O'Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrill,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Milivek,
Yes.
Whitman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. We've got some minutes to approve. Can we have a motion to accept the September 18th, 2020 board meeting minutes?
I move.
Second.
Second.
Any changes or corrections?
I hate to be a pill, but my name doesn't have an E on the end like the other Dawn.
It doesn't? Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Any other changes? Sorry, Don. Any other changes or corrections? Okay. Yeah, if you can spell my name correctly, you can spell Don's name.
Exactly.
All right, roll call, please.
Okay. Blazek,
Yes.
O'Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrill,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Milivek,
Yes.
and Whitman.
Yes.
Okay, I seriously think I heard a seagull when Julie answered.
I think so too. She's making me super jealous. I want to go back.
That was awesome. Okay, can I have a motion to accept the September 18th Personnel Committee meeting minutes?
I move.
And a second?
Second.
Any questions or changes? Okay, roll call, please.
Okay. Blazek,
Yes.
O'Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrill,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Milivek. She's
There.
there.
Yes, and have a look at the beach because it's lovely down there.
Oh,
I can't wait to get down there.
and Whitman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Okay, moving on to reports. For my report, I really just wanted to raise a question that's been come up amongst the membership a little bit, and it's very reasonable. But so a few weeks ago, I got an email from a director who was asking about the status of Quail Ridge during the pandemic, like who's actually working there, and what's, what amount of resources are being expended on a space that's not currently being used. I will say that email started with heavy praise for the SWAN staff and the work that they've been able to do from home. And then it sort of segued into, and what about the space? So, and then shortly after, Jane, I know you got the same question from someone else. And then Dawn, I think you and Aaron have been talking about this a little bit. So clearly it's on the minds of the membership. And there's, I just thought that this might be a good moment for Aaron to give us a little bit of information that helps field the very logical answers to those very logical questions. So Aaron, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not something that we haven't, had discussions, at least internally, Don Tortorella and I. So, just to outline the basics, we're in a 7-year lease that began 2017. So we're about halfway through that. And I did point out to Ted and also to Dawn, in case you ever get this question or wanting to look at numbers yourself, the FY19 audit that we have posted under our SWAN budget page does note as far as those obligations, as far as with the lease. So if there's numbers that you're curious about, at least with the FY19, it shows that the lease obligation in total is $430,000. I did take an opportunity to look over the lease. I would say that if we want to move any further with, looking at any options with the lease, we could. It does have provisions for a sublet, but in terms of the space that we're using, we do have more and more staff going into the space than initially when the pandemic first started. So we are monitoring staff and scheduling them as far as going into Quail Ridge. So we block staff time out in our calendar. Staff have been pretty, I think, relieved to work from home, but that said, I don't think that some of their office environments, or I'll just say office in quotes, is working great for them. That said, I want to say that based on just the staff that we've hired and their ability to work from home, we were able to do that and have been working very effectively. So I'm not opposed to, if we needed to at some point, really consider 100% work from home arrangement. It's just that, with where we are within the lease at this stage, and also just, concerns I would have if we were to try to pursue, did we want to get out of this lease or sublet? I don't know whether or not right now in the recession that we're in, what our success rate would be for getting out of that office space. I will say every time I go into the Quail Ridge campus, there are a few more cars there, but it is largely, it's not at capacity at all. So I'm not saying anything that we couldn't do. I just think that there would be sort of a battle to do that. I would say that once we have the ability to, return to work, I think we'd have a lot of staff being, grateful to go back to the office. We've always had that hybrid work from home environment arrangement. Unfortunately, our board meetings are on Fridays, and of course, that's the day that Friday's the day that everybody wants to work from home. So you'd always arrive at Quail Ridge and see that there's really nobody there. But on Thursdays, that's the 100% staff are in the office day, and that floor space square footage was designed knowing that we would have this some staff working from home and some staff in office. So we were designing it with some flexibility. So that was the idea behind, laptops that you can dock and work from any space that's available. So it's a combination of an open floor plan and dedicated office space. So as we probably design the budget and present the budget to the membership, I expect that there's questions that are going to come up. So I don't know how much we want to have a complete answer as far as the lease and anything that can or can't be done with the lease. Certainly I'd be willing to do that. I did have that lease, when we were working on that. I worked with Roger Ritzman on that lease when we were doing the lease work. So whether or not I would go back to Roger or not, or just go back to Kleinthorpe, to see what options we would have with that lease. I'd be happy to do that if you all think that's something we need to do as far as a budget presentation to give a more complete answer.
I don't think that, Aaron. I think that's a step too far. I don't think that there's any realistic expectation that we would try to break this lease right now, at least from where I'm standing. I don't think you need to do anything other than have the words you just gave us ready in case somebody asks about it. I mean, we all understand leases. We don't, we're not going to take on a $500,000 penalty just to get out of paying our monthly lease. That's silly. But I do think it's important that we have this information so that we as board members can answer people when they ask. The response is very logical.
So when you see the budget, when you get the audit, which we'll have for you next month, we'll be able to see what those updated numbers are. So it does note what the numbers are per year for that. So in case it does get to a point where we think that like, oh, we'll just buy out the lease and convert to 100% work from home. Certainly there would be other savings involved as far as like utilities and things along those lines, but the bulk of that building and expense line is that lease.
Well, and you'd have to be realistic because you'd still need to pay some money out for like a co-work space or that so that you guys could get together somewhere, and so there'd still be some expenses even if you were to get out of the space. And I'm not saying that I think you should. I literally posed the question because it is something that's going on, out there, and I felt we needed to be prepared, with an answer.
Yeah, I agree. Additionally, if the expectation is that everyone work from home, you have to outfit their homes, so that they can work from home. And there's a huge outlay expense when you go to an entirely virtual. Like you think, oh, we're going to save all this money, but now you need 30 staplers instead of 2. And you have to do that again and again and again. So I think that's an important thing when we're talking about saving money. You don't save money in the short term, but when this lease is about to expire, or as we get closer to the end of its natural life, I think it's absolutely a discussion we're having. What would a different layout look like for the future? But it's premature right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is, we're in this situation where we're being forced to experiment and try out new things. And when we were considering, when we were still working out of the Burr Ridge location, we did do a 2-week experiment where all staff worked from home. Some of you may recall that. And, we had a lot of doubters on our staff about that experiment. And after that 2-week period, when we all reconvened and came back, a lot of people were really open to the idea of working from home, some of the days of the week. And it allowed us to at least design a floor plan that didn't require as much square footage, because you're paying per square foot. So again, I feel like it's an interesting experiment, if you like to think of it that way, that we're in. And it would be something that I could also follow up with staff just to see, how are they feeling about the work from home arrangement if we wanted to pursue this a little further down the road. Dawn, I didn't take that. You're questioning about it other than anything like we need to know what our answer would be, because this is definitely going to come up, and that's why
Exactly.
I said
Yeah, totally.
Seem to keep popping up because people are thinking about the SWAN staff.
It's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going on. Like Ted said, I mean, my daughter's company is doing this, and so now she gets a $2,000 allowance to equip her home space, and they're shutting down office space, and they're going to have some co-work space that they can go meet in on occasion.
Yeah, no, it was a super timely question, Dawn, because Jane got this question, and so did I. So that's 3 of us. So
yeah, I think just to be able to give an answer, which I didn't feel I could when I was asked the question, because I hadn't really, thought about it that much, what we would do if we ever all get back to what we thought was our original normal. So I think I think what you say makes perfect sense. And if I was to be asked again, and I explained that to them, I don't think any of the people that mentioned it to me would expect SWAN to break that lease, because like you say, Ted, that's I think it was the people who asked me anyway, I think it was more just a curiosity because
Mhm.
so many people are doing a hybrid, some, you know, some days in, some days out. And what is SWAN doing? They were just curious. So I think the answer that, you know, you and Erin have provided is a perfect thing to be able to tell them.
Awesome.
Very good.
All right, that's all I've got, Aaron.
Thanks. Don Bussey, I don't know if there's anything you want to know before I move on to my report. I do know that I want to set aside some time for you to start a budget discussion. I think that's something that we had talked about last month, and I still intend to do that.
No worries. The only probably other thing that I would point out is you may have noticed workman's compensation insurance was over budget, and we will investigate that a little bit. I'm thinking there was probably an audit done by the insurance firm. I've had that happen to me, and they decide that you're underinsured for workman's comp, and then they bump you. So.
Yeah, we do these audits. Actually, they're roughly around this time of year. So Jeannie and I will put our heads together to see a little bit why that went up for us for the 2020 invoice.
Yeah, I did notice that it is a little expensive given the size of your staff. I mean, my staff is bigger and I'm paying quite a bit less.
And the risk level, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get hit because of like my maintenance staff, and you don't have maintenance staff, so.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that, Dawn, together if you'd like.
Okay.
Again, you know, a few more eyes on some of these things is always welcome and helpful.
Thanks, Don.
At least in my report, if we're ready to move on to that, I did want to just note that we, you know, in terms of where we are with our COVID response, and how we were able to respond to the 7-day quarantine, what we did with that. I did outline for you some of that work last month. I have heard about 3 libraries that have had to temporarily close over this last month, either for a week or it's at some point. So it may not be getting out there too much in the membership, but you may be seeing it more on directors list. I'm not certain. So I think we're just going to be seeing this throughout, you know, the next 6 months. Libraries will close for a period of time.
Well, a library that's not in SWAN, that they had to close as well, and that was Orland Park. That's a pretty big library. Yeah,
that is a big
I don't
one.
know if you heard about that because I know they're not in SWAN, but
No, I didn't.
I think they may have just closed for 3 days. I don't think it was like a week or anything. I think it was about 3 days. I feel like it fell over a weekend somehow, and you know, and it was a staff member who had it. That's why they closed.
And that's kind of what I've worked out with my maintenance team is if we end up with a positive staff member who's been in and around the building quite a bit, I think it is going to take us about 3 days, the best I can figure, to clean up and start again.
Well, we did close for 3. Well, actually, I think we closed for 4 days, but that was just because we were fortunate that, in a way, fell over the Labor Day weekend. So we heard from a staff member like 9 o'clock Thursday morning. We closed 1 o'clock Thursday afternoon, and then because it was Labor Day weekend, we didn't open until Tuesday. But we had the cleaning company come in and do a deep clean, and they like you to wait at least 24 hours after the cleaning before you open again. We're only open for 2 hours on a Sunday, so it seemed more sensible just to close it, and people were very understanding.
Jane, did you do a public announcement? I mean, obviously you just say you were closed, but did you do like a press release, or did you just?
No. We tend not to do much in the way of press releases. I don't need to announce to the whole world exactly what's happening. So we put it on our social media pages, we put it on our website, and we put it on our door, I think, downstairs on our door. And I'm not sure we said we are closed due to COVID. I think we said we are closing to give the library a deep clean or something like that. I forget the exact wording, but something like that. But Orland Park put out that it was a staff member, but I don't know, didn't feel like saying that on my.
Yeah. Here's a cautionary tale on that. So LaGrange is going through this right now, and they opted not to close. They felt enough time had passed since the employee had been in the building, but they prepared a press release, and it was the cover story of our news this week of our newspapers. So big black letters: library closes due to COVID employee. You know, in a which was unfortunate and unnecessary. So I would be careful about, how you release that information. Craft your message, otherwise it gets picked up and becomes something else.
News, right?
And I didn't think a press release. What, why would we do that? We just don't do many press releases. Sometimes it comes back and bites you. It's.
No, I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's how we did it. And we had we didn't have any questions from patrons. And because we were already open that Thursday and just discovered it, we had to ask, patrons to leave the building. And everybody it was incredible. It was all very easy. Nobody really questioned us. And I felt sorry a little bit for the staff member because that this person was going into hospital for some kind of a procedure, and so they did a COVID test before, they were going to admit her or whatever, and she was asymptomatic, so she didn't even know. She had no symptoms or anything, and she felt terrible that we were closing, and we probably would never have known, right? She wouldn't have ever gone for the test because it was just, she had to have it before she could be admitted. So it's interesting how this virus works, really.
Wow. Okay. Hang in there, everyone. I did want to note, as far as the grant application, we should be expecting news from Rails as far as our grant. So I just wanted to highlight some of the metrics that they're using in there. So it is a 3-year average of these metrics, but you'll see that, we do have, considerably lower numbers for FY20 that were reported. This is on exhibit page 15. And I included the chart on the following page on 16 of how Rails formula is working for the FY22 grant. So Julie, I think you'll be attending the Monday Rails consortial committee meeting, right?
Yes, I will be there.
Okay. That agenda is now posted. It's a fairly light agenda. I don't know whether or not they'll be updating us on the grant, but we can certainly update you all next month on anything that we hear at that meeting. Hopefully I'll have some positive news about the funding amount, but that's the amount that we'll also plug into this budget. And some of the preliminary work I've done, at least as far as if let's say, for example, the SWAN budget just remains flat with really no changes, no increases. It is interesting as I've run it as far as the membership fees, at least for, the fact that we'll have, 3, public libraries joining us, that overall, because they're bringing more revenue, fees go down for, really all the public libraries in SWAN, a small amount. So they're not going up. So, but, when I've had directors ask me about this, I say, this is what you should be looking at. I think you could be looking at the numbers that you had from last year based on all the information that I have. And I've spent some time also conferring with a few libraries about their bonds. Some of you I've reached out to directly about that. That said, I also say this is also a matter of, like, if the Rails grant that comes to us, if that also doesn't change, if the grant numbers come lower, then fees could go up.
Erin, maybe it's just me, but this Rails FY22 LSEP funding formula, I don't quite understand what it says.
I don't either.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, as far as the chart?
Yes, please explain.
Oh boy.
Or try to.
Well, there is an aspect to this that, you know, I will just say that over time we've tried to revise out of our own SWAN membership fee formula, meaning the more data inputs you have, it becomes very, very difficult to explain and also be able to absorb why things change. So I would say the biggest thing that they've introduced, at least for the collection expenditures and this annual fee based on operating budget, is they're now doing these quartile allocations. Julie and I have sat through a consortial committee where they've demonstrated how these quartile allocations work, which is essentially they're going to be sorting every library into these quartiles. Excuse me, you know, the libraries will be in these quartiles within, you know, collection expenditures, and then they're weighting each group. So they'll have it basically broken into 4 groups, and then they say, well, if your collection expenditures are in this tier 1, which is the bottom 25%, they're going to weight those numbers as far as they're allocated at 40. So I think what has happened is that they're looking more at trying to have a LSAP funding formula that is, I would say, a little bit more generous to maybe consortia that have a lot more maybe smaller libraries. They're also weighting it, you know, also from the multi-type at the bottom piece. So I think it might be better once we see all the numbers that come back when it's presented to us. It'll be a little bit easier to understand. It is definitely difficult for me to explain it all without some good examples.
So if I understand what you just said, Rails is going to look at every member of SWAN, like individually, at our IPLAR data, and do these calculations, and that's where the percentages come from.
I believe they're going to be doing that for all the libraries and all the consortia.
Right. But I was trying to look at it just for us. But
Yeah.
geez, that's a huge undertaking.
Well, they are the only self-reported numbers that we're providing are the ILLRB transactions. So at least they are looking at the IPLAR numbers that are reported and basing some information off of that. That said,
yeah, I'm not sure I would call the IPLAR numbers reliable.
Well,
exactly.
Let's be honest.
They're all over the place.
Yes, this was something that when we had our SWAN fees committee, there was a lot of wrestling with this, and which is where I would say at least some of the leadership that we had with Jim Deiters in that committee, he was really wanting to look at something other than self-reported numbers. So that was where I would say some of the directors that were at least on that committee, including Tim Dorzemski, felt like there are some tax numbers that could be looked at, and it's basically, here's the tax sheet, here's the number on it, just go from there. Then we added the bond element in there, which, you know, means there is some data I need to collect. I've gotten used to that, such as like I'll reach out to all the directors that I think it looks like maybe there's some changes with their bond based on tax data, and it all works out. So Julie knows I'm not a fan of this formula, and I've stated it.
And there was a lot of, there was a lot of discussion at the consortia committee about this formula and how it's done. And yeah, we've voiced SWAN's dissatisfaction.
there are just some areas of it, especially this annual fee of operating budget. You know, as was pointed out in the committee, for example, Pinnacle does include quite a number of expenses within their membership fees. So if you looked at Pinnacle's membership fees, you go, boy, those are very high fees, but they include an overdrive group, I want to say, is in there. Just as SWAN now has the EBSCO costs, also, you know, not in our fee, but also it's in our budget, and we're collecting that. So it just felt like maybe there was a little bit of a thumb being put on the scale towards like, well, if your membership fees are low, that's considered better. I think most of the consortial group, while they raised concerns, they were willing to see how the numbers worked out for FY22. When you say that, Julie?
Yeah, it was kind of a, let's try it this way and then we can adjust it if we need to in the future. So we're all looking at it, and I think that COVID is definitely going to kind of throw all sorts of those statistics into a muddle.
So if I can move on to the rest of the report, as I noted, I attended, which was the Consortial Special Interest Group meeting. In terms of the highlights from that meeting, I noted, you know, the enterprise continues to be sort of the one thing that when we have that meeting, we have a discussion. They've, I would say the group has used some humor when we have those discussions. They have two points on their agenda. It's the singing of the praises and the airing of the grievances, as they call it. And in the airing of the grievances, they talk a lot about like what Cersei Dynex may not be doing so well, but we also try to make sure that we let the company know where they are doing very well in terms of maybe the support, calling out specific employees that they have that have done a really excellent job. But it's usually what it comes down to in the airing of the grievances. Cersei Dynex wants to know, like, what is the one issue that you would say raises to the top? And it continues to be enterprise. Fortunately, I was not the one in that meeting to bring up Aspen. Another consortia did, and I did let the group know, like, well, SWAN is really pretty far along in looking at Aspen within our system. So other members of the group did bring up Aspen with the CEO. I tried to just kind of remain quiet about it. I didn't want to be SWAN to be seen as sort of like stirring the pot. But that said, we're not alone in looking at Aspen, and we're just further along than the others. There are some cool new features coming for Blue Cloud Mobile. I think we'll be hearing from our membership more about that, and we're going to include some of this within a membership update, hopefully at the end of this month. Such as Blue Cloud Mobile getting the self-checkout feature, and also this kind of curbside called click and collect. It won't be something everyone will want, but I think SWAN will be in a good spot for libraries that are really interested in it, that we could put that in their mobile app. Any questions about that conference or what I shared there?
Aaron, and maybe I've mistaken, but didn't we say that if we proceed with Aspen, that then there's also a possibility of a mobile app with them?
Correct.
So I've kind of backed off on Blue Cloud Mobile in terms of, you know, even trying to do any GEPL enhancements to it, thinking, why do I want to do more with this if there's yet another one coming? Is that the wrong way to be looking at it?
Dawn Torella, I don't know if you want to jump in. That's, I think, an Aspen mobile app's a little ways off. I would say, certainly say, during a pandemic, you probably want to leverage your mobile app as best as you can.
I think the earliest we'd be looking to not have the Blue Cloud mobile app would be May of 2022. correct?
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I would say.
that's, you know, a year and a half away. That's
All right.
long in
Thank
our
you.
mobile app life.
Right.
ILA conference will be presenting 2 of the members of Clarity. We submitted a proposal way back when, pre-pandemic, and we were accepted. So we've been working on that since it all switched to a virtual conference. So I don't know if some of you will be attending ILA annual conference online, but certainly if you have staff attending, they might join us for our presentation. And at least what I'm hearing from ILA, registration for that conference is doing pretty well. I think it's around 750 people registered for it. And there was still a couple weeks to go. That's it for my report. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to stop and answer them. And then we have the operations report. A lot of detail in here as far as user group meetings, and then what's going on as far as the SWAN 100 project. I think you all are probably used to seeing these updates. Dawn Tortorella, do you want to say anything as far as where we're at with the progress of that? I mean, we are in a pandemic and we're having to do all this remote. It seems to be going quite well from my vantage point.
It is going well, and we have weekly training sessions that we post, although it's only the new libraries that are there live. All of those are posted, available for anybody in the membership to take advantage of. So we've tried to let people know that's available, and we publicize that every time we have a membership meeting so people can watch those recordings. And we've also rolled out some of our online curriculum. The 2 new courses that we've just developed, those went out to that group as a preview as well. And those will be out to everybody within a couple weeks.
Yeah, those are classes that are, I would call them, they're self-paced, right? But they're using a platform that we have a subscription to now. Am I getting it right? It's Articulate Storyline is the vendor.
Right. So it gives us a lot more capability for embedded simulations, interactive engagement exercises, and we're excited for that. So the COVID recap, just, you know, kind of outlining those major things that are still in place with COVID. One thing that I'm not sure a lot of libraries know about, we did have a news post and also mentioned it at the last fireside, is just instructions on how to use cashless transaction management. You know, if you have ProPay via Enterprise, which I think all but a few handful of our libraries do, you can actually post those transactions through workflows for services, for sale items, anything, even if they're not related to a circulation transaction. And then the patron can pay them online through Enterprise just to get away from the cash transfer. And looking at the numbers, we've kind of leveled off. So we are not seeing an increase, you know, and it's probably due to just the normal fall activity where you see a little bit of a decline typically from September to October. But you also have, you know, the uncertainty of the increase of activity with the virus, and perhaps people are being a little bit more cautious in going out now too. But we are seeing it, you know, it's not a steady increase.
And the lack of weekend traffic is just, it's so interesting to watch. You just cannot forecast what your traffic patterns are based on old data anymore.
And holds continue to increase. So patrons that do want to use services are placing holds, and we do see that the Blue Cloud mobile app is increasing in use a little bit. I think it's up to an average of about 7 or 8% are mobile apps now. But this is interesting to just see. Whoops. Pre-COVID, we had a lot of enterprise workflows, workflows, not enterprise, and the increase has just been enterprise, patrons placing their own holds through the OPAC.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the next two, September 2020 and August 2020, just shows kind of a comparison across the consortia of how many holds were placed, how many were picked up, and then the number of users placing holds and picking up holds. And we definitely are seeing, we're starting to catch up. In August, you'll see that there are a lot of lines where the red is above the blue. So there were more holds picked up than placed. And that was just kind of all that catch-up activity we had when we reopened, and it continues to be happening, but at a lower pace. So more holds are being placed than picked up at this point. So Scott's report includes kind of the rental collection with Baker and Taylor. We have placed now, we're on the third order, and those have actually gone out. They're, fulfilling holds and they're circulating. We had our first item that returned back with no holds in queue. So now we decide what to do with that. So we'll be looking at statistics on all of that activity as well. The item type consolidation recommended by Clarity is moving very well. Libraries are really anxious to simplify all of the various item types, so that's encouraging. And we're doing it kind of just as a consultation basis, really reviewing with libraries what it means going, item type by item type through their circulation hold maps and their practices. To make it as easy as possible and without changing any of the circulation parameters or rules. The items still circulate the same. To the patrons, nothing has changed, but there's more consistency in how those loan rules are applied based on a DVD or a Blu-ray. It just simplifies everything. And self-paced training. Support tickets happily are, going down from our rapid increase during times of COVID. We still have, a lot of activity with tickets. But we're closing more than opening, which is good. We were feeling a little underwater for a bit during COVID, but we're catching up. And while we had no system outages per se in this tracking period, we did have a brief kind of intermittent outage with our VPN, which caused drops. The systems were up. Patrons didn't notice it, but some of our staff did get dropped out of workflows, had to re-log in. But they got back in. So that was reported. And then Tara has been working with her team on continuing the circulation, discovery, e-resources, public services, user groups, a lot of activity in those, and starting to kind of blend discussion across common themes, like how we deal with items, how we deal with discovery, and how those items appear in the patron interface. And another round of usability testing has been completed, working with Elmwood Park on Aspen. So we're trying to do frequent and small, very targeted usability studies with patrons. We're finding that it works incredibly well over GoToMeeting, where we can capture the recording, have the patron screen share. I don't think we would have been able to do that pre-pandemic with patrons, but patrons are also far more savvy in use of screen sharing and webinar-based interfaces.
There are definitely some advantages to doing it that way, because having had to sit in on one usability test with patrons on small screen devices and trying to be the observer and take notes, having it all up on the screen that you can watch is certainly a better view for the staff looking at what they're doing. Plus, you can record it.
Yeah. So we're looking at the Aspen pilot project with 5 to 7 libraries, kind of starting in January, but really being kicked off in December. We'll put out the call for pilots after the election. We figure people have enough things on their mind. We want to wait till that first week in November to kind of look to the future and start developing the pilot program. As Erin kind of covered earlier, Blue Cloud mobile app is getting a lot of additional functions and features. That kind of came out of the blue for us. It is going to require some reshuffling of our staff and priorities in both Tara's area and Stephen in support to roll out these new features and functionality. And more curriculum development and getting ready for SWAN 100. I think that's it.
Mm-hmm. I highlighted in yellow for this calendar that Dawn has up on the screen is just noting that we'll be tackling this closed session minutes. It's just one of those outstanding things. I held back because Julie had noted that she was going to not be as available. So we'll be tackling that, and then just waiting on Rails to respond to the LSAP award, as I noted. And then Dawn Bussey, I'll be reaching out to you to have a meeting just to go over my first draft of the budget, and we can talk in more detail about some of the lines and some of maybe your thoughts as far as the strategy for the budget. At least my first pass through it is done, and I worked on a lot of the membership fee components first, because that's the most data driven part of it. So sure. Within that, I have Ginny sit down independent of me, and then she goes line by line and library by library all the tax numbers and verifies them against the tax sheet. So she's got that binder now. She's got to do that for this next week.
I do.
And where are we on our agenda? I think we're near
just the discussion item about your goals.
Oh yeah, so we're at the goals part. I basically took what we had done for some of my goals the prior year and moved those over, tried to update at least as far as within the 4 areas, some maybe a little bit more targeted activity. This is a little later than we normally do this. I kind of waited specifically because we did have some changes on our board. I wanted to make knowing that Robin was going to be retiring and Jesse was someone that was going to come to the board. I thought it would be good to have Jennifer and Jesse, fully kind of engaged on the board to talk about some of these goals. So if you'd like, we can go over what some of this involves. I think a lot of this is fairly self-explanatory. Things like as far as within the number 2B, those are some of the things that I think are coming more and more out of the fact that we are moving to sort of a fully online engagement, and having a lot of new directors. I was thinking of making it more along the lines of having some classes that could be just recordings that people could follow along. And they wouldn't necessarily always just be for directors. When I was sharing with our Clarity reps that I'm working on for the ILA presentation, and talking a lot about how we're we are following through on a lot of the clarity recommendations. They were happy to hear that, but they also felt like just with everything else going on, that maybe some just SWAN executive director updates on strategic plan and some of these kind of more short and long-term pieces would be very beneficial to a few staff in their library. It's not for everyone, but certainly some people would really like to hear more about what's going on, in terms of Aspen, how it ties in with everything else that we're doing.
So do you see doing those almost like, just a video recorded update? I guess I'm thinking kind of like D does for Rails.
I was thinking that. You tell me if you think that those updates are helpful. I don't know whether or not these are the sorts of things that you think that should just be covered in a quarterly meeting. Sometimes I feel like updates as far as progress on the plan are welcome to directors at the quarterly meeting, but sometimes we have a lot of other things that we want to get through in a quarterly meeting. So I don't know if it would be helpful to do those separately. Certainly, I think onboarding new directors, they could really benefit just from the basics of where to find budget information and things along those lines. But in terms of questions that they have as far as SWAN and resource sharing and everything that's available to them as well, I'm happy to do that as a live session, but I could also make it a pre-recorded session.
I think it's really a good idea for the new directors. I think it has a limited audience otherwise, but I think for the new directors, it's a really good thing.
I think there are certain aspects of what SWAN is working on that would be really good for departmental management at libraries to know, so that a lot of times the information that gets shared at quarterly meetings doesn't always trickle down to the staff. And if departmental managers at libraries could listen to recordings, especially with regard to user experience, Aspen versus enterprise, that would help managers maybe field complaints or questions from frontline staff or from patrons themselves about what SWAN is doing to try and improve the user experience.
That is exactly what I heard from our two clarity reps, that there's management that wants to know more about some of the strategic direction.
And I guess that's what I was hearing, and that's why I started to envision like you just doing sort of a recorded update on really a lot of what's in the packet, but we know not everybody's going to go read the packet. Right. And then we just try to direct anybody who's interested to it, so they could hear the latest things that are going on.
That section I have at the bottom, what can the SWAN board do? That was from the self-evaluation. I dropped that in there for you all just to see as far as that in terms of what we're talking about now. I was that was what I was excited about, that when I did my self-evaluation, I want to say back in May, I think that there's even more that I'm seeing that I should be working on this and presenting that to directors and library management. I have updated the tactical plan that's posted online for the membership, but again, a lot of these things are there, we can reference, but I do think that maybe doing an overview of the tactical plan separate from a quarterly meeting I'd be happy to do that as just a live session, and we record it. I don't know, Jesse, if you're aware of everything within the tactical plan and the initiatives, being one of the newer members of the board. I think you do follow along closely what SWAN is up to.
Yeah, familiar with most of what's in there. There are a few things that I would like to go through in a little bit more detail, learn more about, obviously.
The expectation is that you commit it to memory, Jesse.
By next month, I'll have it all.
I actually am very impressed that at least as far as within SWAN, that we're able to keep balancing all the changes with the pandemic and then keep pressing forward with a lot of these bigger initiatives such as Aspen. I think there's times where I don't know if our member libraries are surprised that we're still doing that, you know, juggling all this. I think it just shows how quickly we're able to kind of adjust, work from home, and then keep pressing forward on these bigger things. I mean, Aspen is a really big project.
Aspen, and you're bringing in 3 more libraries too. I mean, there's a lot going on.
The new libraries are also going to, you know, serve as our kind of our test, our group to work on the new acquisition system. So there is something to be said for folks coming in and working on something new, and they don't have any preconceived notions of, you know, what an old acquisition system would be, because they're leaving their different ILSs behind. So while we probably have some libraries that would be really excited right now to really jump into our new acquisitions, this is something we're going to kick the tires on with the 3 new kids, so to speak, first.
And remind me, Erin, we're doing like an every other year bringing in new libraries if they're interested, and we agree to do it, right?
Yeah. So when I do this FY22 budget, it's not going to really have anything as far as grants, onboarding new libraries, prorated membership fees. It does simplify it a little bit to not have to like figure out what you know, who are the libraries joining or not. I haven't had any inquiries outside of the ones that we have heard or talked about in the past, such as Bartlett. I don't know, Ted, if your zone group still meets with Lombard as frequently as you were. That was another one that I know they have bigger fish to fry, so to speak. But
yeah, it's been a while since we've heard from Lombard, and I don't know, Julie, have you heard from them? Because I haven't at all.
Me neither.
Barb, sorry, there's a helicopter going. There is they're making progress on their building stuff, but Barb Cruiser has had some health issues. And so that they're struggling just to keep going at this point. So yeah, I think that they would probably not be interested in this next cycle. It would probably be the one after, just given their timing.
Yeah, that's true. This building thing has just been a nightmare, and they're kind of just now getting on the other side of it, and then they've got all the construction to do. So,
are they going to the grocery store site, or did they end up on a lot of some kind?
The grocery store site.
Okay.
certainly, I think as far as any libraries looking to join, we're not going to have that in FY22, but it doesn't mean that there won't be some work that maybe I'll have to organize as libraries maybe are approaching us that will then, for the next budget after that, we'll build in what that's like for those libraries. Knock on wood, hopefully Rails is able to keep these grants going, because that is what is really helping fuel SWAN's growth and other consortia growth. We're seeing CCS add a number of libraries. I don't know if you've been noting that. Palatine. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones. Don Tortorella. Indian Trails.
Yeah, Indian Trails was the last one before Palatine.
Mm-hmm.
How many members are they now?
About 26, I'm going to say.
26, I think. So they're a little like SWAN, where they just seem to be adding, you know. Well, if these goals sound okay to you, I'll work with these. I can certainly, I'll then update you as far as these go in my executive director reports. May not be every month, but you know, periodically I'll update you on how these are going. I'm excited to get started with some of these more webinar-based orientation and updates. And Dawn and I were talking about, you know, getting those planned out and recording them and posting them.
Yeah, it all looks good, Aaron. Thank you for putting that together.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to put in front of the board? No. Aaron, do you have anything else for us?
No, that covers it. Don Bussey, you'll be hearing from me about a date to meet.
Sounds good.
Okay, our next meeting is on November 20th at 9:30. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Blazik,
Yes.
Bo Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrill,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Milovic,
Yes.
Whitman.
Yes.
Great. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.